What's up everybody, and welcome back to the channel. On today's video I'm going to be replacing all the airbags inside of this 2018 RAV4. So what I've started doing is I've started taking out the driver's seat. So I'm going to flip the camera around and show you what I'm doing. So in order to remove the front driver's seat, you have to pop these covers off of the bolts on the front of the seat tracks. If you just stick a screwdriver underneath here and pry up and then slide forward, it'll come out for both of the fronts. And then for the rear, basically need to do the same thing. These are the covers for the rear. You need to pry up on the back end of it and then slide it out a little bit, and then pop this out of the track and pop that out of the track, and then slide it the rest of the way because it's hooked around the track. You can see it slides around the track. So once you slide that off, then you have access to the bolt that's up underneath here. You can't really see it, but you have access to it on both of them. There's the other one right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove those bolts and then show you what connectors to disconnect. All right, once you have all the bolts out of the seat will tilt back and you'll be able to have access to the wiring harnesses that are right here. You have a clip right here. You can see it on the top that's holding it to the metal frame underneath the seat, and then you have these three connectors. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that white clip that's holding the wires in. I'm going to go ahead and pop that loose. Then I'll disconnect the connectors and show you how those get disconnected. So the only connector that's a real pain in the butt to get disconnected is the airbag connector. This connector is just squeeze these two clips and it'll pop out. This one you just press down on that clip and it comes out. This one you just squeeze in right here and it comes out. This one is a little bit more tricky. You have to push in on this and then slide the yellow part back and then push in on it again and the entire clip will come off. But once you get those off, the whole seat will pull right out now. Now for what I'm trying to do, I need to remove the top seat cover so that I can get the airbag out, and so that I can replace this wire and get the seat cover sewn back together. So you can see they're wrapped around this spring on the bottom. What you need to do is just slide this out and then slide this side out, and that comes loose. All right, once that's loose, you need to stand the seat up and work on the back. Obviously you need to remove the headrest. To remove the headrest, you just pull it up when it gets to the top, you push that in and pull the headrest the rest of the way out, and it'll pop right off. Now to remove the seat back cover, I'm not going to unbolt the seat back, I'm just going to remove the cover. There's a zipper on each side and it's tucked inside of the seat. So you just reach up in here and pull the zipper out. Sometimes they can be buried a little bit, but get to the zipper and then just unzip it. And now you have hooks right here that you have to unhook. You just push forward. You have to get it to unclip from there, but you have to, there you go. So just unhook that. Then you got one in the center and then one on the other side. Once those are disconnected, I'll pick back up. Okay, once you get the seat cover removed partially, there's straps that are cloth straps that are tied to the seat to hold it from blowing out. You have to unbolt these two 10mm bolts and then the entire thing should come off. And the front of the seat cover is held in with this purple string. It's like a nylon string and hog rings. So you will have to replace the hog rings unless you can get these off without damaging them. Typically I'll go ahead and replace them. But you need to remove these hog rings and then remove the hog rings on the front side of the seat. So there's one right up here in the corner, one right here in the center, if I can get it to focus right there, and then one right there. And you should be able to pull the whole thing up, and then just then you'll be able to remove the front of the seat cover. Okay, so once you get the hog rings, so I wound up saving 3 of the hog rings. I just bent them out, but these 2 right here, so there's one right here, and then one right here, and one right here. I wound up having to cut them to get them out. And then you also have one right here in the center and one right here in the center that you have to cut to get out. So you'll have to replace at minimum 4 hog rings. You don't need to cut the top one, you can just leave it hooked up. Then you need to pull the headrest locks. The way that they're held in is they have a spring clip on each side. So there's a clip right there and a clip right there. You got to reach up from inside the back of the seat and get to them. So I'm going to pull the seat cushion off and show you. All right, they're kind of hard to get to when the seat cushion's still on here, but there's the clip there and then one on the other side, and then the same with this one and this one. So you just push in both of those clips and slide up and they come out. Now I have full access to the airbag. I can pull it out and put the new one in, and then I'll get my mom is going to see about sewing the seats back together with the breakaway thread and the certain stitch that has to be done to sew them back together. But I'm going to go ahead and remove the airbag. Here's the seat airbag. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this and bolt the new one in. Now I want to stress that when I replace airbags, seat airbags or any other airbag, I generally try and replace the wiring with it, because there's a good chance that the wiring got burnt or the connector got burnt when the airbag fired. So you need to replace the wiring with the airbag. Now the passenger seat airbag should be the same procedure as replacing the driver's side seat airbag. There will be some small differences which I will showcase when I do the passenger seat. So I'm going to go ahead and do the passenger seat. When I get to something that's a little bit different than the driver's seat, I'll pick up and show you what the differences are. So the passenger side seat has 4 connectors instead of 3. The 3 that were on the driver's side seat are exactly the same on the passenger side seat. The only one that's different is the bladder, I believe, for when you're sitting in the seat, so that it tells if somebody's sitting in the seat. And that one, all you do is pull back on this white tab and then slide back and it comes off. So the passenger side seat has 2 airbags in it. It's got one in the upper right hand side if you're sitting in the seat, and one in the bottom of the seat. And unfortunately my brother bought the one in the bottom of the seat, and that one did not ignite, and there's no damage to it. So we're going to leave that airbag in there. We're going to return the one that he purchased and get the correct one for the upper seat. So unfortunately I won't be able to finish that seat, but I'm going to go ahead and remove the clock spring and replace it. I believe that there's also a problem with the steering angle sensor, because I'm getting an electronic power steering alarm on this car, and the lane departure alarm. And I believe the lane departure alarm is more due to the camera from the front, from where the windshield got busted and the camera needs to be recalibrated. And then I'm also getting an anti-lock brake alarm. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace all these airbags in here and leave them disconnected until I get the module serviced and get the seatbelt serviced. Once I get everything serviced and everything's completely reassembled, then I'll hook all the airbags up. I'll hopefully be able to turn this thing on without me sitting in the car, because I don't want to sit in the car in case the airbags do blow off. There is a chance that could happen. It's not super likely, but it is a possibility, and you don't want to be sitting in the car when you power this thing back up in case there is a problem with the system and it discharges the airbags again. So what I'm more than likely going to do is I'm going to leave the headliner out and leave the probably leave the seat covers off until I get the module serviced and the seatbelt serviced, and power the thing up and make sure nothing's going to fire off, because I don't want to damage everything that I just got done working on. So, but the next thing that I'm going to work on is replacing the clock spring. And then after I replace the clock spring, then I'll get to pulling the headliner and replacing the curtain airbags. Now, to remove the airbag on this RAV4, Toyota decided to go different than all the rest of the manufacturers, and I really hate how they did this, but the airbag is held in with springs. So it's kind of a bear to get to them. And I can't show you how to get to this one because the steering wheel has to be turned to where the steering wheel is at an angle like this. There's a hole in the back. You actually have to pry the tool sideways to get this spring right here to pop to the side, because that's the spring that holds the airbag in. This is the spring that holds this airbag, this side of the airbag in. There's a hole right here on the side of the steering wheel, right there. So you stick your tool up in there and get it to line up, and then push over, and you can see it releases the spring. And then there's one down here. There's a hole in the bottom of the steering wheel. You can see it right there. And then you just stick your tool up in there and push up on that, and that pops that one loose. This is the hardest one to get because you have to angle the steering wheel to get to it, and you have to basically pry sideways. You have to stick your tool in there this way and then pry like that so that it pushes the spring over this way. Once you get all those springs to pop loose, the airbag just pops right out. So as you can see on this one, the wires for the airbag for the clock spring got burnt. So the clock spring must be replaced. Typically when the airbag blows, you need to replace the clock spring anyway. And then I also believe that there's something wrong with the steering angle sensor because of the wires being burnt here. It may have damaged the steering angle sensor. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace the steering angle sensor, which is located on the back of the clock spring. So once you get to this point and you have the airbag out, you need to disconnect these couple connectors up here. They're just spring clips that hold them in. And just pull them straight out. So disconnect those wires. These wires do not disconnect. This horn wire is just hooked onto the back of the airbag and just pops off. There's a little spring clip on there. You push in on that spring and the wire will pop right off. So now once all that stuff's disconnected, now you can actually go ahead and remove the nut for the steering wheel. What I typically like to do is put marks on here so that I can reference where the steering wheel was, so that I put it back in the exact same place. So I'm gonna go get a Sharpie, put some marks on here, break that nut loose and take the steering wheel off. Now that nut is a 19 millimeter. Once you take that 19 millimeter off, you just shake the steering wheel kind of side to side and rock it, and it'll come off, and then we can get to the clock spring. All right, so I couldn't find a Sharpie, so I just scribed some lines on there and scribed some lines on the steering wheel. But once you take that nut off, the steering wheel, you just shake it back and forth and the steering wheel comes right off. Next, you need to take this screw out and this screw out. Sometimes there's a screw in the back, but this one just has the two right here. So I'm gonna take those two screws out and then pull the covers off the column, and then I'll expose the clock spring. Now, once you get it this far, if you wanna take this cover out, you have to squeeze these little pins right here to take these clips out. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that just to get it out of my way. But you don't have to in order to do the clock spring. You can just push it back like that and do it. But I'm gonna go ahead and get it out of there and get it out of my way. All right, now that the cover is out of the way, I'm gonna open my new clock spring and just verify that it looks the same. So here's my new clock spring. Let me get the bag off of it. So there's the new clock spring. You just wanna match it up, make sure everything looks the same. You don't wanna turn it. You want to just keep it as stationary as possible until you get it mounted. So what we need to do now is we need to disconnect these electrical connectors that are going to it. So this one you just squeeze in and pull down. This one you just squeeze in and pull down. And then this one you got to slide this back and then it comes off. All right, now that all those are disconnected, we can pop the clock spring off there. Now the steering angle sensor is actually behind here, and I'm actually considering replacing the steering angle sensor. So let me go ahead and get the clock spring off of here. The way that it works is there's a clip holding it on right here. So you pop that one. There's one up here on the top. Pop that one. And then there's another one over here on the side that you got to pop loose right here. Once all those are popped loose, clock spring slides right off. And there is your steering angle sensor. Now we're gonna see if the steering angle sensor is actually included with this new one. If it is, which I don't think it is, but if it is, yeah, the steering angle sensor is not included with this. So I would like to replace the steering angle sensor and see how we go from there. All right, so I've decided to hold off on the steering angle sensor because that part is $320. I wanna see if the sensor in here is indeed bad before I go replacing a $300 part. So I went ahead and popped it back together, put the new clock spring in there, Got the steering wheel back on, so now I'm just going to tighten the bolt down for the steering wheel. I'm not going to install the airbag yet because I still have some engine lights that I got to figure out. So I'm going to put all the airbags in here. I'm just not going to connect them because obviously I still have to send the ABS module, which is located under the armrest, and the seat belts to get rebuilt. So I'm going to replace all the airbags, but I'm going to leave them disconnected. But that's replacing the steering wheel airbag. The knee bolster airbag is located down here. I've already removed it. I had it removed when I first got the car, but you've got a bolt that holds it in right here, a bolt that holds it in right here, and then a bolt right here. And then you've got your airbag connector right here. And then you've got a, what is this? Tire pressure reset light is mounted into the cover that's mounted below it. So you do have to remove there's a cover that goes up underneath here, and then the knee bolster airbag bolts in right here. So I'm not going to put the knee bolster airbag in until I get the airbag module replaced or reset and get the seat belts reset. All right, so now I'm moving on to removing the headliner. You got to remove these clips over the bolts for the handles, and they're a real pain in the ass to get out. What you do is stick a screwdriver in right here and pry out, or on the inside and pry out. Those clips are really long and they just push straight down in there, so you just need to pull it straight out. It's not a cover that flips open or anything like that. It's a plug, so you got to pull that entire plug out. Once you get that plug out, then you can see that should just freaking squeeze together and pop out, but we'll see. So those are just clips. They just clip into the body. So once you pull that plug out, then you can just squeeze the clips together and pull the handle off. So then there's the handle completely removed. So now I got to remove the other three handles. I went ahead and removed the trim around the sunroof. It just pulls off. It just wraps around the frame of the sunroof. I'll have to remove the sun visors, which they are screwed in right here, and there's another one in the front. So let me quit doing crappy camera angle. There's a screw there and a screw there. Same on that side. We'll have to remove the clips for this, and we'll have to remove the upper overhead center console. But I'll get to that after I get all the handles removed and get the sun visors removed. Okay, I've started removing this side panel because it's holding the headliner underneath it. So to remove this lower panel, you have to remove the front. You have to remove the panel that runs right along here. Just grab it and pull up, and then it'll disconnect. I removed the door seal trim so that I can get my fingers in behind the black cover that goes here. You have to pop the cover off of the bolt that is holding the bottom of the seat belt in. You just grab onto the side and pry it sideways and it'll pop off. It's a 14mm bolt holding the seat belt in. And then you can pop the whole cover off. You also have to remove this rear trim right here. Once you get to this point, there's two clips, one here and one here. The way these pop out is you just take a screwdriver and stick it in the center, if I can do it with one hand, and you just pop the center out, and then the whole clip comes out. Once those are removed, you should be able to just pop this panel completely off. I'm gonna have to put the camera down to do this, but should be able to just pop this panel off and then remove it. Okay, so this panel's held in with a clip up here, these two clips right here that go underneath the door seals, and then the two push-in clips that were down here at the bottom. Then you just feed the seatbelt through here. Now you have full access to the seatbelt. We can go ahead and remove the seatbelt, and the headliner is free from up here. So the headliner is also tucked in below the door seal up here, but we can get around that. You can pull the door seal if you want to. I'm not going to. Typically, when I'm doing this, I would pull the entire door seal out and then leave it out until I'm done. But because this car is outside, I'm trying to leave the door seals intact. All right, now, in order to remove the seat belt, I went ahead and broke it loose from the automatic, or from the height adjuster. I'm leaving the height adjuster in. I just took the seat belt off. And then in order to, this is a single stage seat belt. Some of these 2018s have dual stage seat belts, which would mean that it has two pistons that fire. This one's a single stage, so it only has one piston. In order to remove these airbag connectors, you pry up on that little yellow piece. You can see that it's sticking up higher than the rest of the clip. So you just stick something small in there and pry up on it, get it to separate, and then you can pull the clip straight out. And now this is held in with a 10. This was a 14, and the nut on the bottom was and the bolt on the bottom was a 14. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this seat belt and get it out because I have to send it up to my airbags to get it reserviced. All right, so now that I have that side done, I'm going to go ahead and move over to this side, get this side to the same position. The reason I haven't taken the sun visors out yet is because they're Torx bits, and I got to go into the house to get my Torx bits, so I'll do that after I finish taking the seat belts out. Okay, so the driver's side was single stage, this one's dual stage. So this one has 2 cylinders on it, so you have to disconnect both. All right, so this last part on the back end is a little difficult. You've got an access cover right here, and you got a 10 millimeter here, 10 millimeter here, 8 millimeter here. Same on this side. You've got an access cover, and then you got a 10 millimeter, 10 millimeter, 8 millimeter. You got to pull all that stuff back, and then you pull this trim off of the ceiling. And as you pull down on the headliner, you'll be able to pop these little clips out. So I just wedged my hand up in here and pulled down, and the clip popped out, pulled down, clip popped out, pulled down, clip popped out. Then you got to wiggle your freaking hand up in there to disconnect this piece right here. So there's little clips on the sides that you got to push in. You got 4 of them, so you got to push in there, there, and then you got to come around to this side. Pull this panel down and wedge your hand up in here and get to the back side of it through here and disconnect the other clips on that side. Once that's disconnected, then you can disconnect the overhead light. Overhead light disconnects by squeezing in this connector here and this connector here, and then that light will pull down. Then you pop the center of the light out, and that's what stays with the car. So you pop that section out and put it up on top of the headliner, and then once I remove the overhead console and the sun visors, I should be able to pull the headrest out. Now, to remove the center console, all you do is pry in on the back and pull down until you get those 2 clips to release. Then you just grab it and yank down on it, and the whole thing will pop out, and then you got 1 electrical connector plugging it in. All right, after you get all that removed and you disconnect the wiring from the little tack strips that are all across the top of the headliner, you can slide the headliner out through the trunk. And now I have full access to the airbags. So now I'm going to go ahead and replace these side curtain airbags, and we'll go from there. So I just want to let y'all know these clips are an absolute nightmare to get out of here. The way they work is you have to have little pliers to squeeze those 2 clips together and pull this out of the center of each one of these. So the dark yellow ones have a green connector in them, the white ones have a red connector in them. Once you get that free, then you have to stick a little pick down in here and get it into that groove and pry it until you pop both sides out. This is the pick I was using to get them out. It was a nightmare to get those out, just so that you know. But now that I've got all those clips out of the passenger side, I haven't done the driver's side yet, but now that I've got all those clips out of the passenger side, I'm going to go ahead and hang the passenger side roof airbag. So after you bolt the new airbag in there, just pop your clips back in and then slide the center clips into the center of them and push them in until they click, and then everything should be solid. Everything should line up the way that it's supposed to. Now, I've left the wiring disconnected because I'm going to do some further diagnosis to the car before I hook all that airbags up. So I'm going to wind up actually leaving the headliner out of it until I'm able to test some other stuff. And then once I verify, I'm gonna leave the headliner out until I get the airbag module rebuilt and get the entire airbag system hooked up. And then I'll put the headliner in after I power the car up and make sure the airbags aren't gonna blow. Now, in order to remove the ABS module, you have to pull up this little piece of carpet that's down inside of the bottom of the center console. And you need to remove these 4 10mm screws. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those 4 10mm screws. And then we're also going to pop the back of the console off. There's 2 bolts that we need to get to from the back. And then we're going to pop this top plate off of the center console so that I have enough room to move this thing around. All right, so you just take those 4 bolts out, pry up on this center console piece, and this entire piece will pick up. Unscrew the shifter knob. It just screws on. So there's the shifter knob screwed on. You just unscrew it. Take that off. Pick that up. The e-brake piece clips into the center console, and then this rear piece is just held in with 4 clips. You just pop it out. And now this is where the ABS module is right here. So we're gonna go ahead and disconnect the ABS module. And the way you disconnect it, sorry for my crappy camera work, you push in on this little clip right here and then pull this white bar out, and it will actually pull the entire wiring connector out. If I can get it to pull out. So there's the entire wiring connector loose. Now, tuck that up out of our way. We're going to remove that bolt right there. And then we have 2 bolts in the rear that have to be removed, which you can see them right there. So all those bolts are 12mm. So once I get those removed, I'll have the ABS module. All right, once you get all those bolts out, just reach in here and it should slide out through the rear. And there's the airbag module. So now I'm going to take this and the seat belts up to my airbags up in Norcross, Georgia, and get them to service them, and then I'll be ready to put this car back together. But the airbag module is only held in with 3 bolts. They're 3 12mm bolts. Take those 3 out and then slide it out through the back. All right, guys, that shows how to replace all the airbags in the entire car except for the lower passenger side seat airbag. I'm not replacing that because it didn't ignite. But everything else on this car showed you how to replace all the rest of the airbags, how to remove the headliner and all that stuff. So next video on this car will more than likely be buttoning up, putting the interior back together, getting the seats back together, and then diagnosing the ABS problem, the steering wheel electronic position or electronic power steering issue, and then some other small items that need to be addressed on the car. I also showed you how to remove the airbag module. Now I'm going to take the seat belts and the airbag module up to a place on the north side of Atlanta called My Airbags and get them to recondition those. And once I get those back, then I'll start putting the interior back together. But until then, I won't be doing anything else to this car. I'm going to be working on either the Lexus 1UZ swap, because Terry finally got all the parts to finish working on it, minus the clutch pedal, which we just tried to order yesterday. I don't know if we're going to get all the pieces or not. We ordered them off Amayama, and then ordered one of the pieces from here local at a dealership because Amayama didn't have any stock on it. Hopefully everything's in stock. We won't know until the beginning of next week. So as soon as I know if all those parts are in stock and we're getting everything, then we'll have everything that we need to finish that car. But right now we have everything to put the transmission and the engine together, put it into the car, and get everything final fit, get the wiring finished and all that kind of stuff. So that may be the next video. Also, I haven't worked on my Volkswagen in a little over a month and a half, maybe 2 months. So I'm going to do some work on the Volkswagen and see where I can get with it. So hope you guys will tune in and keep following the channel. And I hope this helped out quite a few people with trying to figure out how to do these airbags. And if it did, please, like always, like, comment, share, subscribe, let your friends see what I'm doing, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.